Good day, everyone. We are done with our first lesson, which is a short or a brief history of chemistry or a short background of chemistry. Now we will going to have another topic, which is the common things that you could find in the laboratory or the chemistry laboratory. So these are, of course, your laboratory apparatus, and of course, we also need to discuss about what are the safety practices that we need to remember upon entering the chemistry laboratory. Okay, so to begin with, we need to know our objectives or the learning outcome that we need to attain in order for us to finish this or to learn something about this topic. Okay, so the first one, we need to enumerate and describe functions of common laboratory apparatus in a chemistry laboratory. Second will be draw some common laboratory apparatus that is based on the projected or the example image of our laboratory apparatus. Third is identify and explain the parts of a simple microscope, because microscope is one of the most important equipment that we could find in the chemistry laboratory. And lastly, identify and practice safety laboratory precautions. Okay, so we will going to start with the common laboratory apparatus that we are using in the chemistry laboratory. Of course, the first one will be the test tube. So a test tube is actually a glass tube with one end open and other end closed. Okay, so it is used for holding small samples. They are primarily used for qualitative assessment. Why qualitative? Because we are observing what is the physical uh, changes that may occur in our samples and the comparison. So when a large number of samples need to be tested and compared, test tubes are used to make this easier. Because commonly when we do samples, we often use droppers to extract small amount of samples only. But if we need a larger amount, we need to use the test tube. So they are also easily capped with a rubber or glass topper. Okay, so since you test tube is actually having an open end or one end is open, then in order for us to secure our samples, we need to use a rubber or a glass topper on the top of it in order for us to prevent our samples from spilling. Okay, so this is an example of test tube. So in our image, the test tubes are actually placed in a test tube rack, and test tube rack is one of the apparatus that we will going to encounter in this lesson. Okay, the second one is our graduated cylinder. So when we say graduated, this only means that there is a specific unit of measure that is located in a cylinder. So this is a primary measuring tool for a volume of liquid. Only that our graduated cylinder can only accommodate a small volume of liquid. There are several markings up and down the length of the container, which with specific increments. That is what we call graduation. So graduated cylinders come in many sizes. The smaller they are in diameter, the more specific the volume measurements will be. Why? Because that only means there is the line that indicates that the smaller cylinder will going to have an accurate specific volume. Okay, so the third one, this is an example of our graduated cylinder. So as you can see, it is somehow a lot more bigger than your test tubes. Okay, the third one is the beaker, a common container in most laboratory apparatus. So it is used for mixing, stirring, and heating chemicals. Okay, why? It is because the beaker is somehow like a picture form kind of laboratory apparatus. Most beakers have spouts and the rims to aid in pouring. Okay, so if you are familiar with a picture, you could see that there is a lips there where it is guiding the water when you are pouring it down on a certain container. They also commonly have lips around their rims and markings to measure the volume they contain. Okay, same as the graduated cylinder, but this is more bigger or in wider in form. Although they are not a precise way to measure liquids. Beakers come in wide range of sizes. So there are 50 ml, there are 100 ml, and of course there are 25 ml. And it depends on what size you're going to use. Okay, next we have the Erlenmeyer flask. Okay, so here there are different apparatus or container that we could find in our laboratory apparatus, and one of them is Erlenmeyer flask. So it is also known as conical flask because of its shape. It has a narrow neck and expands towards its base. This allows easy mixing and swirling of the flask without too much risk of spilling. Okay, so the purpose of having a long neck on this one is that it secures your liquid from spilling. The narrow opening also allows for the use of the rubber glass stopper. Okay, so take note that aside from your test tubes, rubber and glass stopper is also used for Erlenmeyer. Okay, or the conical flask. It can easily be clamped to a ring stand as well as heated or shaken mechanically. Okay, so take note, we have the test tube, we have the Erlenmeyer that could be heated but in only in a moderate flame only. Okay, so these are the example of Erlenmeyer flask. Okay, the fifth is also known as a boiling flask, or what we call the Florence flask. So it has a round bottom and a long neck. So the difference is that, as you can see, the Erlenmeyer is actually somehow has a wider opening than your Florence flask. But the Florence flask is actually having a volumetric bottom, or a round bottom, rounder than your Erlenmeyer. So it is used to hold liquids and can easily swirl and heated. So same as your Erlenmeyer, your Florence flask can be used for heating purposes. It can also be capped by rubber or glass toppers. Okay, so we have three already that we are using glass toppers or rubbers as a lid so that we cannot spill our samples. Okay, the sixth one is what we call the watch glass. So watch glass is somehow a small, like a small saucer, but smaller in form, and of course it is transparent. So it is just a round piece of glass that is slightly concave or convex. Think of a lens. It can hold a small amount of liquid or solid. So they can be used for evaporation purposes and also can function as lid for the beaker. Okay, and also watch glass or watch glasses are used for observing our samples, or for sometimes they are used as a lid for observing the bacteria production. Crucible or crucibles. So when we say crucibles, it is a small clay cap made of material that can withstand extreme temperatures. They are used for heating substances and comes with lids. Okay, so this is the kind of crucible that we have. Okay, so it's somehow similar to mortar and pestle, but somehow it is much more smaller than mortar and pestles. Next, we have the Petri dish. Okay, so aside from your watch glasses, Petri dish is actually somehow, it's not concave, but it is a shallow glass with a plastic flat bottom dish with a lid. So it has a lid of its own. So used primarily in laboratories for the culture of bacteria and other microorganisms on special prepared media, because we need the lid so that we could secure the bacteria. Okay. And of course, it is a transparent type of of apparatus so that we could observe the bacteria and whatever is happening in our bacteria there, how they multiply, or how they multiply per seconds or in a specific of time. Next, we have the evaporating dish. So it is used to evaporate exist solvent, most commonly water, to produce a concentrated solution or a solid precipitate of the dissolved substance. Most are made of porcelain or borosilicate glass. Okay, what's the purpose of the material which evaporating dish is made? It is for the purpose that it can withstand the a high temperature that is made of the flame or produces by the flame. Okay, so that our evaporation process will be successful. Okay, number 10, we have the funnel. Okay, so as you have encounter some funnels, these are the instruments that used to guide the liquids, the pouring of liquids into another container. So the purpose of this is that we are eliminating the rest of spilling the liquid. So this is made possible by funnel shape, which includes a wide mouth and a narrow tube. Okay, next we have the mortar and pestle. Okay, a mortar is a vessel which substance are ground or crushed with a pestle. So this is your mortar, this one, and this is your pestle. Okay, so it is often used to prepare reactants for a solid state synthesis. So for example, a certain rock or a certain chemical or a certain substance need to be grounded or crushed. We are using mortar and pestles to do the job for that. Okay, next we have the volumetric flask. Okay, so volumetric flask is a round flask with a long neck and flat bottom. Okay, it is used to measure the exact volume of liquid. So there is a small line in the neck that indicates how far to fill the bottle. Okay, so it is used bottom of meniscus. They come with the special caps that will not let anything in or out. So we have on your volumetric flask, we have this indication where it can pour, you can only pour a specific volume of liquid only. Okay, and of course, this is a special kind of flask, whereas it has its own special lid so that it will prevent any spilling of our certain substances. Okay, so 13 is the droppers. Okay, so these are small glass tubes with narrow tips on one end and a rubber bulb on the another. Okay, so they suck up liquid that can be then squeezed out in small amounts. This can be used to add an indicator to a solution about to be titrated. Okay, so these are commonly be seen in a medicine for babies. Okay, but your droppers in your chemical laboratory apparatus is somehow made of glass. And of course, there is no graduation or any measurement around its tube. Okay, next we have, and the droppers are only used to get samples from one container into another, or to drop a certain sample so that and the sample that is being measured by every drop made by the droppers. Okay, next we have pipette or pipette. Okay, there are this is actually a large there are a lot variety of pipettes designed for measuring the exact volume of liquid and placing it into another container. Sometimes pipettes are actually used to mix liquids in a certain container, and of course the most important rule of the pipettes is to measure the liquid in a certain container. Okay, next we have burette or burette. Okay, so a burette or burette, actually there is another Spelling for burette, that is BURRT. Okay, so you could see that on other books. So burette or burette. Okay, so it's a glass tube that is open at the top and comes to a narrow point opening at the bottom. So it is somehow a long tube, um, longer, much longer than the pipettes, or there is a smaller version. So right above the bottom opening is a stop cap. Okay, that can be turned to control the amount of liquid being released. And of course, it could suck up or release a certain amount of liquid. So there are markings along the length of the tube that indicate the volume of a liquid present. Okay, so here is your stop cap. Okay, so you need to rotate that in order for you to suck or to release a certain amount of liquid. So the amount of liquid that is released can be slowed down to a drop every few seconds. Burettes are one of the most accurate tools in the laboratory. Next, we have the thermometer. Okay, so thermometer is colloquially known as the lab thermometer because there are a lot of varieties of thermometer. So it is used for measuring temperatures other than the human body temperature. Of course, most commonly it is used to measure temperatures of your samples and temperatures when you are heating something. Okay, so it ranges from negative 10 degrees Celsius to 110 degrees Celsius. Laboratory thermometers are designed for lab purposes such as checking boiling point, freezing point, or temperature of other substances. So these are the example of common laboratory thermometer. Okay, somehow they are somehow similar to the temperature that we use for measuring body temperatures, but there is a specific thermometer for laboratory purposes. Okay, next we have ring or iron stand. The ring stand along with the iron stand is actually used for heating purposes. Okay, so ring stand is used to suspend burettes, beakers, flasks, crucibles, and others. Okay, so above other containers or in some cases, a heat source such as Bunsen burner. We will going to discuss that below. Okay, usually intended for large setup in experiment. Okay, somehow they become a holder or they become where this equipment placed during the heating process or the experimental process. Okay, so these are the example. We have here the stand. Okay, and the ring. Okay, so this is actually made of what we called a setup. Okay, next we have tongs and forceps. Okay, so these are the tools used for grabbing things that should not be touched by the hand. Example, when you are heating. Okay, so you are using tongs and forceps to hold your container. Some tongs are specially made to hold beakers, others to hold test tubes, and so on. There are also general tongs. Okay, general tongs are those tongs that could be used in any type of the container, whereas you could adjust the sizes of how wide it could hold a certain container. Forceps are used to grab small things like solid chemicals that are broken into chunks so they can be safely handled and added to container. Okay, here, tongs and forceps. Okay, next we have spatulas and scopulas. Okay, spatulas and scopulas are for scooping solid chemicals. Example, salt. They are typically used to scoop a chemical out of its original container into a boat. For example, example of weigh boat is a weighing scale, so that it can be weighed on a balance. Okay, so here, scopulas, it is called scopulas because of its shape. Okay, example, this one. Okay, next we have Bunsen burner. Okay, we have already discussed it earlier. So sometimes it is used with iron stand and iron ring. Okay, so Bunsen burner is actually a chemical apparatus that is connected to a flammable gas source. There is a knob to adjust the amount of gas flow in a rotating collar that controls airflow. So this both must be adjusted to get an ideal flame for heating purposes. Okay, this is an example of our Bunsen burners. Okay, so this is mainly used for heating purposes. Next, we have alcohol lamp. So an alcohol lamp is used for heating, sterilization, and combustion in a laboratory. The alcohol lamp uses ethyl alcohol uh, as a fuel. Sometimes it is used to, if there is only a small amount of a heat that is needed, it is used to replace or use as a replacement for Bunsen burner. Okay, here is it. Here it is. Okay, next we have the wire gauze. Okay, so it is a sheet of thin metal and has net-like patterns or a wire mesh. Okay, so wire gauze is placed in support ring that is attached to the retort stand between the Bunsen burner and the glassware to support the beakers, a flask, or other glassware during heating. Okay, what's the purpose of this? So that we could prevent our containers, especially the glass containers, to directly contact with fire. Okay, and of course, to stop or preventing our container from a small the black object or the black substance forming at the bottom of our container. Next, we have the tripod. Okay, so tripod is a piece of three-legged equipment commonly used to conduct experiments in laboratories. It is used as a stand platform to hold and support glassware, such as beakers and flasks during experiment and when the glassware is not in use. Okay, so aside from that, your wire gauze is sometimes put above your tripod. And tripod is commonly used with your alcohol lamp. Commonly used. Okay, next we have the reagent bottle. Okay, reagent bottle is actually sometimes called storage bottle. So these are containers made from glass. Sometimes it is made up of plastic or rare metals, stainless steel or aluminum. The purpose of having stainless steel or aluminum so that we could prevent some reaction for a certain samples or chemicals. So used for storing chemical reagents or reagents. Next, we have the filter paper. So when we say filter paper, a semi-permeable paper barrier placed perpendicular to a liquid or air flow. So it is used to separate fine substances from liquid or air. So it is used in chemistry laboratories to remove solids from liquids, meaning filter paper from its name. We use this one for filtering substances from getting liquid or from getting our solid substances and separating it from the liquid from its liquid part. Next, we have the microscope. So when we say microscope, it is a scientific instrument that makes things that are too small to appear bigger than it is so that they could examine correctly. So a simple microscope is a microscope that uses only one lens to enlarge an object through angular magnification. So there are different kinds of microscope. So giving the viewer an erect enlarged virtual image. It has a magnifying glass that has a double convex lens with a short focal length. Example of this kind of instrument includes the hand lens and reading lens. When an object is kept near the lens, then its principal focus with an image is produced, which is erect and bigger than the original object. Okay, so this is the simple microscope in its parts. So this part is what you call the ocular lens or the eyepiece. This is where you are viewing or you're putting your eyes or eye so that you could see whatever is happening in your sample or in your specimen. Next, we have the body tube. Okay, so the body tube is actually the black part which connect the earpiece and the revolving nose piece. Okay, so these are the objectives. Next, we have the arms, which supports your revolving nose piece along with the ocular lens, body tube, and objective lenses. Okay, the stage where the specimen is being placed along with the stage clips and of course your diagram I mean. Okay, next we have the course adjustment knob. Okay, we are using this one to check our specimen, and also along with the fine adjustment knob we are checking the magnifying quantity, or we are adjusting the magnification of our stage clips and our objectives. Okay, so of course the base supports the entire setup. Okay, now, so these are the following common laboratory safety rules and practices. First is always wear appropriate protective clothing and gear, especially when doing experiments. So there are special gears that we need to use when we are entering the chemistry laboratory. Okay, examples for this are laboratory gowns and aprons, closed shoes, laboratory safety goggles, masks, and gloves. Okay, next we have always follow the instruction of the chemistry instructor. Okay, so before entering, make sure that you have read whatever is written in the rules or reminders before entering the chemistry laboratory, along with whatever the instruction given to you by your instructor. Next, remove bags and other unnecessary materials, especially flammable ones, on the laboratory working tables. So make sure that your tables are clean, and of course, no other things will be put on the working tables. Fourth is handle laboratory apparatus and equipment properly. Each laboratory apparatus and equipments have a specific way on how you are going to use or handle them. Okay, next we have handle hot glass wares with tongs and use hand gloves. Okay, so this is for the purpose that we are preventing ourselves from burning, and of course from reacting with other chemical substances. Okay, next, work with volatile chemicals under a fume hood. Okay, so as you can see, on a certain movies or other medias, we are having those foods which will going to protect our body in contact with these chemicals. Number 7, pour liquid samples from large containers to smaller ones. Next, we have heat test tubes at an angle. Okay, why? There is a specific angle in heating the test tube. It should be away from your face. Okay, so that if a reaction occurs, you are safe from burning yourself. Next, avoid heating a closed container because it might create or it might be the result of having your chemicals reacting with the vapor. So avoid working alone. Make sure that someone is guiding you, and avoid horseplaying inside the laboratory. A chemical laboratory is used for experiments and other educational purposes. It is not used as a playground. Okay. Number 12, clean chemical spills immediately. Okay, so remember that each chemicals has a certain reaction with each other. So in order for us to prevent from unnecessary things to happen, make sure to clean it immediately. Next, we have do not return spilled or unused materials to reagent bottle. Of course, because there are materials that needs to be washed away or throw away after using, so that it will not going to react with other unused materials, or to avoid contamination. 14, we have do not bring food and drinks in the laboratory. That is prohibited, so, to avoid food poisoning and other reactions. Do not taste or smell any chemical in the laboratory. Okay, never pipette a solution with your mouth. Okay, so avoid that one for health or safety purposes. Never use chemical from unlabeled containers because you might mistaken some of them and you might misuse them. Never remove chemicals, apparatus, and equipment from the laboratory. Okay, and never perform an authorized experiment because there are instances that this might result to some unnecessary event or an accident. Dispose all waste materials according to your instructional procedure or teacher's instructions. Clean and return all apparatus and equipment to its proper places. Okay? If you are done with the experiment or the activities, make sure that you have cleaned your working station. Next, clean up the area after experiment and before leaving the laboratory. Know the eye wash area, fire blanket, and fire extinguisher, so that if there are accidents that may occur, you could directly go to those places. Whatever is needed during the accident. Okay, know the first aid practices. And lastly, immediately alert, inform the instructor or laboratory instructor in case of accidents or unsafe condition to prevent it as early as possible. Okay, so that's it for our lesson 2. And you can recheck or reread this one for further understanding. Thank you everyone and have a safe day.